Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was always the creative type in high school, spending most of my time writing stories and coming up with jokes. Everyone knew me as the class clown, but I was more interested in witty humor than just acting out. I was obsessed with humor magazines like National Lampoon. Their style of satire just spoke to my soul. Our school newspaper was this incredibly boring publication that no one ever read. It was just announcements about bake sales and sanitized reports about school events that made watching paint dry seem exciting. The editor was this girl who treated the paper like it was a New York Times or something. She ran it like her own little kingdom, only letting her friends write for it. One day I got bored during study hall and decided to write a parody version of the school paper. I included all sorts of things the real paper would never touch, jokes about the chemistry teacher's toupee that fooled absolutely no one, an expose on the cafeteria's mystery meat, and a piece theorizing that our algebra teacher was secretly a robot because no human could possibly be that boring. I only made 3 copies for my best friends. That's it. Just 3 copies. By third period, the hallways were filled with people laughing and passing around photocopies of my parody. Someone had taken it to the library and made copies. Then those people made more copies. It was everywhere. I tried to blend into the wall as I watched the editor of the real paper demanding to know what this garbage was and who wrote it. Meanwhile, other students were loudly praising how hilarious it was, saying it was way better than the real paper. Some even wondered why the school paper couldn't be more like this. I won't lie, part of me was terrified, but another part was absolutely thrilled. People were actually reading and enjoying something I wrote. The editor didn't share my enthusiasm. When she found out I was behind it, she completely lost it. Every time she saw me in the halls after that, she'd make a scene. She'd call me a loser who thought he was funny, or she'd loudly announce to everyone that I was just a wannabe comedian who couldn't get on the real paper. I tried ignoring her at first, but she kept at it for weeks. She even started spreading rumors about me, saying I cheated on tests, that I stole other people's jokes. Really petty stuff. Of course, it didn't take long for the administration to get involved. When the vice principal called me to his office, he questioned me about being behind the unauthorized publication. When I admitted to it, he sternly reminded me that I had violated school policy by mocking staff members. I tried to defend myself by saying I was just trying to be funny, but he wasn't having it. He gave me a 3-day suspension and warned me not to let it happen again. The suspension sucked, but what really got to me was the editor's continued harassment. She just wouldn't let it go. That's when I remembered this nickname I'd thought up for her ages ago but never used. It wasn't particularly clever, but I knew it would stick. The kind of thing high school students would latch onto immediately. The next time she started up, she mockingly asked how my suspension was treating me, calling me a failed comedy writer. That's when I casually thanked her for asking but called her Pap Smear instead of her name. The hallway went dead silent for a second before erupting in laughter. The nickname spread through the school like wildfire, and suddenly she wasn't so eager to draw attention to herself anymore. But I wasn't done. A few weeks later, I spent an entire weekend creating another parody paper, this time making sure to leave off my name. I went to school super early one morning and planted copies everywhere, in lockers, on bulletin boards, in classrooms. By the time first period started, the whole school was reading it. When the vice principal called me in again, he tried to pin the new paper on me. I played innocent, suggesting that someone must be copying my style, inspired by the first paper. I told him that, while I understood why he'd think it was me, I couldn't take credit for someone else's work. He looked skeptical, but without any proof, he had to let me go. The editor was furious, convinced it was me, but unable to prove it. She tried spreading more rumors, but by that point, everyone just called her Pap Smear behind her back, and no one really took her seriously anymore. The real school paper's readership dropped even lower after that, while my underground parody became the most anticipated publication in school. She transferred to a different school the next semester. I heard that she couldn't handle the nickname following her around. The new editor actually had a sense of humor and started including some lighter content in the official paper. Not quite as edgy as my parodies, but at least it wasn't just about bake sales anymore. It all started 3 months ago when I had to get an entitled woman arrested for assaulting my sister. My sister has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. We were at the store and she was trying to reach something from a higher shelf. This woman, let's just call her Karen, got annoyed because my sister's wheelchair was blocking her way, even though there was plenty of space to go around. I politely asked her to be patient for a moment while my sister reached for something. Karen responded rudely, saying she was busy and had places to be. She then tried to forcefully push my sister's wheelchair out of the way, causing my sister to almost fall out. I managed to grab the wheelchair in time, but my sister was terrified. I demanded to know what was wrong with her and pointed out she could have seriously hurt my sister. Karen dismissed us dismissively, suggesting that people like my sister were just seeking attention and shouldn't be shopping if they couldn't do it properly. That's when she made the biggest mistake of her life. She tried to grab my sister's wheelchair again. I immediately stepped between them, and she actually tried to punch me. I blocked her hit and held her back until store security arrived. They had everything on camera, and she was arrested for assault. She got sentenced to 18 months in prison, and I thought that was the end of it. Last night, around 11 p.m., I was in the living room with my sister watching a movie when we heard something hit the house. My sister asked what the noise was, and I told her to stay calm and that we needed to leave immediately. I could see two men in dark hoodies throwing what looked like Molotov cocktails at our house. One of them had also slashed all 4 tires on my car. The front yard was already on fire, and smoke was starting to come in through the windows. Just as I was getting my sister into her wheelchair, I heard shouting from next door. Our neighbor, a retired Marine, came charging out of his house. He yelled at the attackers to stop where they were. The 2 men started running, but our neighbor was faster than they expected. He tackled one of them to the ground while the other one got away. Other neighbors were already calling emergency services and trying to fight the fire with garden hoses. When the police arrived, they arrested the guy our neighbor caught. The officer pointed out that his partner had abandoned him to take all the blame, asking if that's what he wanted. The guy cracked almost immediately. It turned out Karen had somehow managed to contact these guys from prison through another inmate's contraband phone. She had promised them $5,000 each to teach me a lesson. The police tracked down the second guy within hours. Here's where it gets even better. Karen's original 18-month sentence got extended to 10 years for orchestrating an attempted murder. Her 2 accomplices each got 8 years. They also found the contraband phone, which led to an investigation that uncovered the whole smuggling operation in the prison. During her hearing for the new charges, Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about how everything was my fault and how I had ruined her perfect life by getting her arrested. When the judge warned her about contempt of court, she became even more unhinged, yelling that she was the real victim. The judge followed through on his warning and added another year to her sentence for contempt of court. The fire department managed to contain the fire before it could spread inside the house, though our yard and front porch needed serious repairs. Insurance covered most of it, and our neighbors set up a fundraiser to help with the rest. We got a better security system after that, with cameras covering every angle of the house. Sometimes I still catch myself checking the windows at night, but knowing Karen will be behind bars for at least a decade helps me sleep better. Last week we heard she tried to start a riot in the prison cafeteria and got herself put in solitary confinement. Her appeal was denied last month, with the judge citing her continuing pattern of destructive behavior and complete lack of remorse. She even lost all her privileges when they found out she was trying to contact more people outside to harass us. I guess some people never learn, but at least she won't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. I've been in the tech consulting business for over a decade now, working my way up from a junior developer to a senior system consultant. Most of that journey has been pretty straightforward. You know, the usual corporate ladder climbing, but there was this one incident that still makes me chuckle whenever I think about it. About 2 years ago, I was working at a mid-sized consulting firm. We had a solid reputation for delivering quality work, and most of our clients were reasonable people who understood the basics of how consulting works. Part of our job involved traveling to client sites for implementation phases and important meetings. The company had a pretty standard travel policy: book economy flights when possible, stay at decent but not luxurious hotels, and keep meal expenses reasonable. My immediate teammate for many projects was this contractor. Brilliant guy. Had been in the industry even longer than me. He had this way of handling difficult situations with a calm that I honestly envied. We worked well together, complementing each other's skills and covering each other's backs when needed. He'd actually turned down several lucrative full-time positions just to maintain his independence, something I'd come to understand better after our experience with this particular client. Everything was going smoothly until we landed this new client. Right from the first interaction, something felt off. The project itself was interesting enough, a major system overhaul for their operations. But the people? They operated as if they existed in some alternate reality where common sense took a permanent vacation. During our initial briefing, their controller pulled us aside and made it very clear that they had strict policies about expenses. He emphasized that they wouldn't approve anything that seemed excessive or unnecessary. I assured him that we completely understood and always aimed to be cost-conscious. The controller then sternly told us that he would be personally reviewing every expense claim. For our first in-person meeting, we did what we always did: booked the most economical flights that fit the schedule, packed light to avoid checked baggage fees, and showed up in our standard business casual attire, button-down shirts, dark chinos, and comfortable black shoes. Nothing flashy, but perfectly professional. The meeting had barely started when we were pulled aside by an assistant who nervously told us that the executive management was quite disappointed with our appearance. They apparently expected their consultants to wear formal suits, properly ironed shirts, and formal shoes. My colleague, ever the professional, calmly requested a written confirmation of these dress code requirements. Surprisingly, they actually sent it. For our next visit, everything changed. We had to book evening flights the day before because we needed time to iron our suits. We also had to check our luggage since fitting multiple suits, fresh shirts, and formal shoes in carry-on bags wasn't possible. The budget hotel we usually stayed at wouldn't work either. We needed a proper business hotel downtown with ironing facilities. When the invoices came in, including the extra expenses for checked baggage, the nicer hotel, and my colleague's time spent ironing, the controller predictably rejected them. We simply forwarded the email where they had demanded formal attire. The controller still refused to budge. That's when my colleague made his power move. He immediately stopped all work and told them he wouldn't continue until the payment was settled. He suggested I do the same. After they missed a crucial deadline and several remote meetings, each time receiving a polite but firm response about pending payments, the executive team finally caved. They dropped the formal dress code requirement, approved our expenses, and we finished the project as originally planned. About 6 months later, I received a message from their human resources department through LinkedIn. They were trying to recruit me for a permanent position, offering a competitive package and exciting growth opportunities. I couldn't help but laugh as I archived that message, and I later heard through industry contacts that after we left, they tried implementing the same strict dress code with their next consultants. It backfired spectacularly. The consulting firm charged them triple our rates to cover the premium business attire requirements. They finally learned their lesson and dropped the formal dress code altogether. Sometimes I still get LinkedIn messages from them about various positions. Each time I politely decline, remembering those suites hanging in my closet that I never needed to wear again. Just last week they reached out again, this time offering a director-level position with what they called an unprecedented compensation package. The irony wasn't lost on me when I noticed their job posting specifically mentioned flexible dress code as one of the perks. My old colleague, He turned this experience into a regular part of his consulting workshops, using it as a case study in managing client expectations and standing firm on reasonable boundaries. He even kept one of those suits as a prop for his presentations, jokingly calling it his most expensive consulting lesson. I guess the most valuable consulting advice isn't about systems or processes, it's about helping clients understand that reasonable and respectful treatment of their service providers is just good business sense. I'm a senior in university, studying computer science. I've always been the type of student who takes academics seriously, maybe too seriously, according to some people. But hey, when you're paying for your own education by working part-time at a coffee shop, you tend to value every minute spent in class. This semester, we had this software development course that required group work for pretty much everything. The professor made it clear from day one that we needed groups of exactly 5 people for the final project and exam. Me and my 2 friends from previous courses immediately grouped up, but we were still short by 2 people. That's when she came into the picture. She approached our group during class one day, asking if she could join our group since she'd heard we needed more people. I explained that we actually needed 2 more people, but she quickly assured us that she knew someone else who might join too. I knew about her reputation. Everyone did. She was notorious for joining groups and contributing nothing, but we were desperate for members, and the deadline for group formation was approaching. I looked at my friends, and they just shrugged. Reluctantly, I told her she could join. For the next few weeks, we had several small group projects. Each time the same thing would happen. She would message to ask if she was in our group, I would confirm and remind her of the Friday deadline for her part, and she would enthusiastically promise to complete it. But just like the narrator in those comedy shows would say, she did not in fact do it. We ended up doing her part every single time. The other person she promised would join never materialized either, so we had to scramble to find a 5th member. Thankfully, another student joined us eventually. Then came the midterm exam. It was a group exam where we had to be physically present to work together on a complex software architecture problem. 30 minutes before the exam, our class representative sent me a message informing me that she wouldn't be coming to class today. I was already stressed about the exam, and then, in the middle of it, my phone buzzed with a message from her asking if she was in our group for this exam. I stared at my phone. This was the 5th time she had asked the same question. We were already 45 minutes into a time-sensitive exam, and she wasn't even there. I showed the message to my group mates. One friend expressed their disbelief while the other suggested we ignore her and focus on the exam. I put my phone away and we continued working. After the exam, our class representative approached me to let me know that she had been messaging non-stop, asking why I wasn't replying and expressing her upset. When I asked to see the messages, the screenshots revealed a series of increasingly angry texts from her. She complained about me not responding, called it rude, threatened to report me to the professor, and accused me of unfairly excluding her. I decided enough was enough. I compiled all the screenshots of our previous conversations, documented every instance where she had failed to contribute, and wrote a detailed email to our professor. I included the messages where she repeatedly asked if she was in our group despite being told multiple times, and her pattern of not showing up for group work. The next day, the professor responded with a brief message thanking me for bringing this to their attention and assuring me they would handle the situation. A week later, I found out she had been called to the department head's office. Apparently, this wasn't the first complaint about her behavior in group projects. She was put on academic probation and required to take a course on professional conduct. She still glares at me whenever we cross paths on campus, but I don't regret my decision. My only regret is not standing up to her sooner. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.